And now here they are, the most powerful duo of daffy podcasters to ever whirl their wheels in the Wacky races. Competing for the title of world's wackiest racer, the cars are approaching the starting line. First, it's the Giga Mega Drive Turbo, driven by Gorgeous George. Next is Barry the Nomad in the AV RCA hookup pickup truck. And they're off to a standing start. Oh, and why not? They've been chained to a post by Dick Dastardly, who shifts into the wrong gear. And away they go on the way out wacky races. Sega Bits presents Sega Talk, a podcast talking all things Sega! With your hosts, George and Barry.
Look, it's a giant talking egg. I'm not talking to you. I'm talking to the master here. Say what?
Boom!
I'm just kidding. George, are you okay?
I almost had a heart attack, but I'm okay. I survived.
That's okay. That's okay. Yeah, well, this episode is going out publicly on Halloween Day. In fact, we are doing it. It lined up perfectly. So we had a little break, like we took a week, an extra week, and it actually lined everything up perfectly. We're gonna have a Halloween episode this year. We're gonna have a Christmas episode, George. We're gonna dress up as
Christmas?
Santa. I mean, we're not recording on Christmas.
Okay, go ahead. Woo, that would be crazy. But at least it comes out on Christmas. That'd be cool.
It comes out on Christmas, yeah, and I'm coming out on Christmas. Wait, no, I'm not.
The Grinch
and so
too,
on this,
right? For Christmas,
George, you just gave it away.
Oh,
You just gave it away.
Okay, sorry.
So this episode of Sega Talk is a Patreon pick, and George, I will save you the trouble of plugging the Patreon. Because, I don't know, I feel gracious today. But essentially, if you like what we're doing, you can check us out, patreon.com/SegaBits. It's the only way that we make any moolah, any scratch off of this venture. But what's great is that we have a small but strong Sega fan community of people who, they comment on the shows as they drop. But even more spectacular, there are those at the premium level where they get to pick the episodes, and this whole year I think has been picks, right?
Right.
I mean, have we? I think it's been all
most of them. I think they may have been. We snuck in one or two in there, but most of them have been picks for sure.
Yeah, picks, and we love them. And you know what? No one ever picked Booger Man, which would have been the best one because we have Patreon pickers.
Right.
We can make booger jokes. Never did it, but Nicholas Schaefer, he was the picker of this episode, and. I gave it away at the intro. We were talking about wacky races for the Sega Dreamcast, and this is what Nicholas had to say. He said, I didn't get this game until much later, but I loved the cartoon movie it was based on as a kid, and it was what introduced me to most of Hanna-Barbera's cast. So I was so overjoyed to find out that I could relive the movie in game form on my favorite game system of all time. And it's interesting, he's saying a movie. I'm not aware of a Wacky Races movie, but maybe I'm wrong. Maybe we should delve into the history of not only Wacky Races, but the production company behind it, Hanna-Barbera. So we're going to do a little something different here. We're going to jump back all the way to the 1950s. So George, what would you wear in the 1950s?
Probably like a suit with a hat, like maybe a fedora, because they weren't stained yet. Like they weren't the nerd thing yet. Back then they were stylish, right? Maybe. Or am I thinking maybe more like the 20s? I don't know. What would be attire?
I would wear a tan suit with a belt line that's up to here.
Oh yeah, probably the higher. Can you go higher than that?
And then a really thin black belt. And then I'd kind of have these glasses, but this part would be extra thick.
Oh yeah, of
course.
You know
what I mean?
Right.
And I'd be clean shaven, my hair would be shorter, and it'd be slicked back.
Right.
And I'd go, hey, George, let's do a radio show about
everyone talked
the latest,
that back then.
The latest electromechanical. That would be a great episode if we just did a throwback electromechanical show.
Ooh.
Where we're like, oh, have you played the latest? It's called Cowboy Western.
With real sound.
But anyway, with real sound. So yeah, let's talk about the animation studio that brought us Wacky Races as well as many iconic characters. So Hanna-Barbera Cartoons Incorporated, it was an American animation studio and production company founded in 1957 by the creators of Tom and Jerry and former MGM cartoon studio staff William Hanna and Joseph Barbera. And their shows and characters, I mean, they're iconic. Right. Their lineup includes Huckleberry Hound, Quick Draw McGraw, the Flintstones, Yogi Bear, Top Cat, the Jetsons, Johnny Quest, Scooby-Doo. They even made the Smurfs cartoon. They didn't create the Smurfs, but they did the cartoon. And of course, Wacky Races. And outside of those well-known characters and shows, there are dozens upon dozens of weird, offbeat shows from the company that really need to be seen to be believed. And I'll touch on some in the near future in this show. So, it's not a big segment or anything, but I'll just mention some. Hanna and Barbera, they first met at MGM Studios in 1937 while working at the animation division over the next 20 years, they worked on award-winning theatrical animated shorts. And in those later years, they even did side work. They had a little side hustle where they made original animated title sequences and commercials for shows like I Love Lucy. So if you've ever watched like an old 50s TV show and there's like these beautiful animated intros, I think Bewitched has one. I don't know if they made that one, but like those were basically like studio animators kind of doing a little side hustle. Making some money on the side. But unfortunately for them, 1957, MGM decided to close their cartoon studio down because, and this is kind of a sign of the times, so listen to this, they closed the animation studio down because they felt they had enough of a backlog of shorts to re-release and they didn't need new content.
That sounds about right.
That totally feels like Warner Brothers currently is the owner of Hanna-Barbera as well as a ton of other IP, and I get the sense that they cut a lot of new stuff because, like, we've got a catalog now. We're good. You know what I mean? Like,
right.
Why make another, I don't know, like, why make another DuckTales cartoon? I mean, I know that's not Warner Brothers, but, like, that sort of mindset, like, it's already on there. We made a remake. We don't need to make any more. People watch the 100 episodes or whatever that's there, and they'll be happy.
It's kind of like a Mad magazine. Like, for what I've noticed, they reused art from like the early glory days, and they like recycled them monthly, and so they probably were going to do that. The animation version of that. That's interesting.
Exactly. Yeah, because I mean, back in the day, they would show a short before the films. And I guess at this point, they just felt like they could repurpose them, redo them. I mean, famously, the Three Stooges, at one point, they just started redoing their shorts with the current, Stooges that were on hand. So they would do something they did 20 years ago or 15 years ago. Again, same script. No one noticed because, it's not like anyone had VHS or DVDs or it was being televised. There might have been some guy who was like, hey, 20 years ago, I was in I was in the Nickelodeon, and I saw this short of the Three Stooges, and they're doing it again. They're going back to the well.
Exactly. And I think even now in shows, you get the same repeated jokes, and people have the internet, and they could literally look them up, but it works, Like,
dude, stuff gets... Like, I think people working in those industries had it so good because everything was memory hold. People would forget about things, and it was just because content was so, cheap. It was like Kleenex.
Yeah.
Cheap. Well, yeah. And there were even cases where, like, daytime TV shows were recorded on tape, and then they would just tape over it. So a lot of shows just became lost media because there was no reason to keep it around. So, in the case of...
Are you going to talk about the first animated Hanna-Barbera official movie thing with, what's that character called? It's the one that's literally a blackface character. I forgot what his name is, though. You don't know?
Boy, man,
Okay, never mind. Okay, there is his first, you can look it up, but there was his first animation from Hanna-Barbera that had their character. I think it's called, like, Bombo or something like that. And it wasn't seen by the public until the 2000 because it never released in theaters, but that character's had movies and like shorts. It's kind of like their answer to Disney. You could see it. It's like
Are you talking about Tom and Jerry?
No, not Tom and Jerry. I'm thinking about a different studio actually. Never mind. Maybe I'm the one that's wrong here. You're right because they made Tom and Jerry first. You're right. Maybe I'm thinking about
the only thing. Right, because this is Wacky Races, not Wacky Racists.
Sorry. I was thinking. Let me see.
But no. But I mean, if you want me to briefly touch on that, yeah, the Tom and Jerry shorts. Tom had various owners, and one of his well-known owners was actually a woman that played off the mammy stereotype of
Right.
and
I think some
the
of
older black woman who oversaw
I think some of these like depictions of these characters in this time era was actually progressive because they actually like put black characters on TV, and I know they seem stereotypical today, but back then, I agree.
I will say that in the 30s, a lot of the Tom and Jerry shorts, and I mean a lot of the cartoons in general, had racist depictions. And they'll put the content out there now, but with a disclaimer saying, this is a product of its time. We're presenting it as it was, so as to not like change history, so that you don't, like Disney does that. Disney won't put out old content, but Warner Brothers, they'll put out old content. I have DVDs right now that I recently got from them, Blu-rays of Tex Avery shorts, and they'll put at the beginning like, this is a product of its time. And that's it. But what's interesting is, with Hanna-Barbera and with television at the time, there was a lot of progressive content going on. There were, there was a lot of white sitcoms on TV, and then it started to shift, and you would have a lot of really popular black-led sitcoms with all black cast. And I'll just get to it now. So there were some very crazy Hanna-Barbera concepts that went out there that never really made it to air, and one of them actually was the Blackstones, which was an all-black Flintstones. But the thing was, I do believe they were going to use an all-black voice cast, and I very much doubt they'd have an all-black writing team, but I'd have to imagine at the time, given the creatives teams that were going on with sitcoms, that it's entirely possible they would have had one or two black writers. So, I mean, that would have been progressive, actually. You look at the art and it's a little out there, but I don't know. The Cosby Show was made by a black creator.
That's true.
Their depiction, Bill Cosby.
Right, no. Let's pretend that stuff, that was not on TV didn't happen. We're just talking about the TV show, right? It was an all-black cast, right?
So, getting back to the notes here, because it will kind of tie in with what you're saying there. Hanna-Barbera felt that because the theatrical animation studio was closing, that they had a opportunity here to shift animation to television. And so they approached MGM and they said, hey, we want to do a animated television series that stars a cat and a dog. MGM passed on it. However, I do believe a live-action director that they worked with at MGM liked the idea. His name was George Sidney, and he hooked up with them, and the three of them convinced the company Screen Gems to make a deal where they basically had a studio now, and they named it HB Enterprises, and the president of Columbia Pictures at the time took an 18% ownership in their company. So they were doing really well for themselves. And I think that's because there were these people who were seeing that TV really was the next step in this whole entertainment medium. I mean, TV was a thing, but animation on TV,
right?
Like original animation, not really. And so, yeah, they worked together, and Screen Gems became their new distributor and licensing agent, handling merchandising for all their characters and animated programs. A year later, MGM did good on their word and closed their animation studios, and much of the former staff moved over to Hanna-Barbera. So, Hanna-Barbera is essentially an evolution of the MGM animation department. And from 57 to 69, the studio saw huge successes with animated sitcoms. They produced shows like The Rough and Ready Show and Huckleberry Hound. But it was in 1960 that they saw their greatest success with The Flintstones, which was a show that was loosely based off The Honeymooners, which was a show that existed prior to that. You ever see The Honeymooners?
No, I've never. Is that the one where he goes, "I'm gonna hit you and put you to the moon"? Is that the one?
Yeah, that's Ralph Cramden.
Okay,
it's a bunch of.
I've seen clips of it.
Yeah. It's a good show. He's like, one of these days, Alice.
I know. I understand the humor, but it's like, It's pretty
straight to the moon.
It's pretty screwed up society where they're like,
I loved, yeah, I loved the Futurama joke where in the year 3000 they got history wrong and they thought he was talking about people going to the moon someday, and they're like, a man named Ralph Cramden had the dream of going to the moon. He goes, one of these days, Alice, bam, boom, straight to the moon. And he's like, no, he wasn't talking about going to the moon. It was a metaphor for beating his wife.
Yeah, I can't wait until
which it was.
They get. I can't wait until our future is like that, where they're like talking about like, oh, the dab is, and then they talk about it's like it's the way you celebrate America, and so everyone does the Pledge of Allegiance.
They do it wrong too. They go like this. Remember the dab?
And then they do it every time they do the Pledge of Allegiance. Oh, just like they used to do it back in the day.
You hold it.
Right, exactly.
I pledge allegiance. Yeah.
Gotcha.
So, the Flintstones, it ran for 6 seasons in prime time. So it was the first prime time, evening animated sitcom. And at the time, it was the longest running primetime animated sitcom until The Simpsons beat it much later in 1997. So if you're wondering how, progressive in terms of a TV show, like, this is a live action time slot and they're giving it to a cartoon, that's insane.
Right.
In the late 60s, Hanna-Barbera began to create more action, adventure, and fantasy shows, including one of their greatest creations, Johnny Quest. Have you seen that? That's an awesome show.
I have seen it, yeah.
There's a Blu-ray out. It looks amazing. The art is like comic book art. Like, it's really well detailed.
Oh, really?
And the animation isn't like super, I guess you'd compare it to like anime, where it's like really well drawn but kind of limited movement.
Okay, I see what you mean.
Yeah, but Johnny Quest, I give that a big thumbs up. That's well worth watching. And it was around this time that the studio was actually sold to Taft Broadcasting, and soon after shows like Space Ghost and Birdman aired on TV in 1968, and the studio saw the release of the Banana Splits Adventure Hour, which was an insane collaboration with Sid and Marty Krofft, I do believe. And here we get to the focus of this Sega Talk, Wacky Races, as well as its spin-offs, The Perils of Penelope Pitstop and Dastardly and Muttley and Their Flying Machines. And all of these aired on CBS in 1968 and 1969. And I'm going to end our history of Hanna-Barbera there because this is not a Hanna-Barbera show, but that just brings us up to the point of when Wacky Races came out. However, it's worth noting that a year later, Scooby-Doo premiered, and it kicked off a whole new era for the studio, including some of the aforementioned shows I mentioned that need to be seen to be believed, including shows like I love the title of this one, Inch High Private Eye, and he's just a little detective. He's like tiny.
Right.
Jabberjaw, which is basically Scooby-Doo underwater. Speed Buggy, which is basically Scooby-Doo but a talking car. And then one that would never air in 2022, The Amazing Chan and the Chan Clan.
Yeah,
you can use your imagination.
Yeah, that's not gonna. I did look at the list of Hanna-Barbera, and I think, and that character I was talking about, I got confused. It's a Warner Brothers property, and it's part of the Tiny Toons. When I was looking at franchises, I was like, oh, I remember liking Tiny Toons, and then I diverted when I was looking at Wikipedia. It happens when you're on Wikipedia. It's not just me. But I did notice that one thing I did appreciate from the company is that they didn't just stick to, like, Tom and Jerry forever. They, really... Didn't they also do the Powerpuff Girls animation, right? Did you say that? Because I think I saw it in the list of like animated things.
No. So I'll get into that. I didn't put it in the notes, but basically in 1991, actually, holy shit, almost October 29th, 1991, like almost to the date we're recording this.
Right.
TBS bought the Hanna-Barbera library for $320 million, and that was how Hanna-Barbera got into the fold with all of the TBS stuff. And so that's why you see Space Ghost Coast to Coast being mixed in with Powerpuff Girls. That's why you and me and a lot of people around our age saw shows like this so often, because Cartoon Network, before they were what they are now, they relied a lot on a back catalog of cartoons. which is interesting because, as I mentioned, Hanna-Barbera were fired from MGM because MGM had enough of a back catalog. And now here we are in 2022 where Cartoon Network is all new programming and they don't show that back catalog anymore.
Right.
But when we were kids, they would put shows on where they intentionally were showcasing how crazy and weird Hanna-Barbera was. I remember shows where they would, like, there would be an announcer and he'd be like, today we're going to be watching the craziest Hanna-Barbera pilots. And, like, here's Jabberjaw, here's the amazing Chan and his Chan clan.
I do have a question for you. So, like,
yeah,
which of these franchises... Did you watch Wacky Races, the actual show? And if you did watch Hanna-Barbera stuff, which ones were, like, the ones you've seen, and how did you see it? Because some of these cartoons are super old, right? Yeah,
well, all of these, I mean, it's no mystery that we are kids of the 80s and 90s. So, none of these shows were being made. But they were in syndication. We were seeing them. And so for me, I did watch Wacky Races quite a bit. What I really liked about it is that it was like watching a sport because someone was going to win in the end. And I wasn't too into sports, but like if you take me to a baseball game and they do like, the hot dogs are racing around the field like on the Jumbotron.
Right.
Like I'm all into that. And so to do an entire TV show, and I've got the DVD here actually, an entire TV show that's based around who's going to win. It's kind of fun, like they're all doing crazy stuff. There's no plot really outside of just they're racing. And so it's really like a spectator cartoon, which doesn't really exist. The only other kind of cartoon they did like this was Laugh Olympics, which is, to be quite honest, the Mario and Sonic at the Olympic Games. Like it predates that, but it's all the Hanna-Barbera characters at the Olympics. And you just watch them do competition, and at the end someone wins. And it's fun. It's like an epic crossover. But me, I gotta say, I've probably seen at least one episode of almost all of these shows at some point.
Right.
Scooby-Doo I watched a lot. Johnny Quest and the New Adventures of Johnny Quest I watched a lot. Flintstones, Jetsons. Jetsons Meet the Flintstones was epic. The Jetsons movie was epic.
Right.
So,
yeah.
It's funny because Hanna-Barbera has always been there, but I don't really think about loving it. And then when I started doing these notes, I'm like, geez, I think I love Hanna-Barbera.
Right, and like in terms of like animation studios, like do you rate where you rate them? Because there was like Looney Tunes, right? There was Warner Brothers. There was
right.
What else was there? Disney, obviously. Did you hear about Disney?
Yeah, Walt Disney Animation Studios is like peak. Warner Brothers, second, if not peak. And then you've got ones going down the list like MGM, Columbia, I think, even had their own. So, every movie studio had their own. Tex Avery, who I do believe did shorts for MGM and Warner Brothers, I think is up there in terms of theatrical. But if we're just talking TV animation, I think Hanna-Barbera is like number one.
Right.
And even Ruby Spears, which was, I believe, their own studio, started at Hanna-Barbera. Ruby and Spears were people who actually worked on some of these shows. So, I'd say they're probably like the number one American animation studio, just in terms of their sheer output. And even if they're not around anymore, like, it's just amazing. When you look at the catalog, it's like, geez. And how much do they buy this for? $320 million? That's nothing.
Right, for all the history.
Imagine how much a Scooby-Doo movie makes.
Exactly. No, more than that. Even Tom and Jerry, like, he just had a movie. I know that right now they're sticking them on streaming platforms like Paramount Plus, I think.
Right.
So, and I wasn't that into the new Tom and Jerry movie. I liked the old style cartoons a lot when I was growing up. I think Tom and Jerry is my favorite, obviously. Flintstones are good. Jetsons are good. Which one else did we talk about? Yogi Bear, I think they did, right? Is that the one they do like animation classes on with the little bow tie?
Yeah. Yogi Bear.
Yeah.
And it's interesting. I didn't put it in the notes, but one of their character designers, he was actually a Japanese American named Iwao Takamoto, and he did a lot of the character designs for Wacky Races. He also created Scooby-Doo, and I believe he designed the whole cast. check him out sometime because his art is it's very like anime light. Like if you look at his raw drawings of like Velma and Daphne, like these could be with little minor tweaks like something you'd see on Twitter 2022, you know, like
right.
But anyway, diving back into the wacky races here. So, given the massive output of content from Hanna-Barbera, the original Wacky Races is, I mean, honestly, it's a drop in the ocean of animation that they have created. However, this little show created ripples that saw the creation of cartoon spin-offs, insane reimaginings, and of course merchandise that included video games. But where did Wacky Races begin? So the show was originally developed as a live-action game show, and it was co-produced by a company called Heater Quigley Productions, who is best known for Hollywood Squares. Do you know that show?
Yeah.
Yeah,
They did a big
in the boxes.
right, and then they did like a big epic like legendary sketch on a Saturday Night Live, I think, or is it Mad TV that did it? But there was one that was like parodied all the time.
Yeah, it was always parodied, and the show itself, it came back like when we were kids, and I think some of the best supercuts on there are of Gilbert Gottfried, who was the center square,
right?
Because the center square is almost always called because it's one of the main like intersections. And so they would put him there because he'd get to do the most quips. So, yeah, very classic show. But their concept would be that real contestants would bet on which wacky racer would cross the finish line first. And I even watched a documentary where they floated the idea of kids writing in and guessing who would win, and then they'd send prizes. And Legal, I think, was like, no, that we can't make a game show every week. This is too much.
Right.
In the end, it would have, it just would have been too much. So they scrapped that concept. But Hanna-Barbera was still contracted to do the animation, so they decided to go ahead with just a cartoon show. And Peter Quigley Productions, or whatever it was called, Heater Quigley Productions, remained associated with the show. So it's a weird case of this live-action game show company being associated just because of the canceled concept. And the concept itself for the show, it's very simple. There are 11 different race cars racing against each other in various races throughout North America, with all of the drivers hoping to win the title of World's Wackiest Racers. And amongst the 11 different cars were a total of 23 characters, including people and animals, which is a insanely huge cast for a cartoon show. Like a TV cartoon. 23 characters in every episode, and that doesn't even count like incidental characters that they might meet during the race. Just, there was one had like a guy who was like, "Oh, Penelope Pit Stop, you're so cute," like that guy.
Right.
And the show itself was actually inspired by the 1965 comedy film The Great Race. And I say inspired by, however, if you look at the Hanna-Barbera catalog, it's really common for them to actually just like directly rip off TV shows and movies and celebrities at the time, which would sometimes put them in hot water, like they'd get threatened with lawsuits for copying things. But I mean, I think they got away with it. But
it's like
let's check out.
It's like the early days of video games where like Shinobi just took Spider-Man.
Took the words right out of my mouth.
All right.
So let's check this out. It's the theatrical trailer for The Great Race.
Let me put it up. There you go.
Tony Curtis is brave.
Which is interesting. It's a Warner Brothers production, and Warner Brothers eventually bought Hanna-Barbera.
This chick. Okay.
Funny? Naturally. But never
so it's like Wacky. So.
Whoa.
But there's racing.
Not surprising.
Hey. Oh, Natalie Wood. She was killed.
What do you mean she was killed?
She fell off a boat, and Christopher Walken was there.
She fell. You know how Hollywood is just so many accidents.
Yeah. I think Christopher Walken actually murdered her.
I agree. He's like, oh no, you fell off the dock.
Great race. It's the greatest.
That's crazy. I didn't know that.
It's the gayest.
Whoa.
It's
Whoa.
the wildest.
This looks good, right?
Right. This is a lot of... The trailers back then were so weird.
I mean, the biplane is straight out of Wacky Races. There's a character just like that.
As Professor Fate,
Oh yeah.
the meanest villain that
And look
ever
at Professor Fate. He looks like Dick Dastardly, doesn't he?
Yep.
Tony Curtis as the great Leslie,
That was a handsome man back then.
heroic daredevil.
Tony Curtis was. And you know who his daughter is?
As
Who?
Wacky Dubois,
Jamie Lee Curtis.
lovely damsel
Oh. She just had a movie, the Halloween one.
Larry Storch, Dorothy Provine. It's the fabulous around-the-world race from New York to Paris.
You know what? I really do like the practical effects on this movie. It's pretty good. Like this car, the lifted vehicles.
No, I mean, I want to check this out, actually.
You are an emancipated woman, Mr.
Oh, the romance for the ladies.
Why not?
An emancipated man.
Look at he's wearing a wife beater. That was like really popular back then with guys, right? Like that was like the manly man.
I don't think anyone called it that, though. They wouldn't say
Back
I'm
then,
putting
no.
on my...
No, it was an undershirt. It was like you're seeing the guy in his like pajamas, basically, like in his unmentionables that other women don't get to see him in. His wife beater, basically.
Look at that.
Whoa.
So there you have it.
It's
you go.
Technicolor and Panavision film. That's a big deal back then.
So what do you think about that?
I think they copied it a lot. Like even the whole concept of it being wacky, it's literally the marketing of the movie. It's the gayest race, right? That's what it said there.
Right, yeah. So, yeah, I mean, they were inspired by other media, but, and you mentioned it, I mean, is this that different from Sega's output in the 80s?
No.
I don't think so.
No,
Not at all.
It's something that you're influenced by other things, right? Even,
Right.
I mean, let's be honest. Disney franchises are not unique either. They're taken from folklore tales, so that's what they did, right?
And, you know, in the documentary, there's a great DVD documentary that's actually on the release I have here. I actually tweeted it out, and I put it on our Patreon. People can check it out. It's a nice, like, 18-minute little behind the scenes. But someone put it best. They said something to the effect of, like, Hanna-Barbera, they weren't trendsetters. They would really just look at what was trending at the time and latch onto it and make it kind of their own and put it in their cartoons. Because if kids, you know, if people are running to the theaters to see The Great Race, then why not make a cartoon about it? You know, what's the harm? And same thing with Sega. Sega would be like, you know, oh, what's big right now? There's a ninja movie. All right, make Shinobi. What's big right now? Oh, there's a helicopter. Oh, make, what is that? Super Thunder or whatever. Thunderblade.
Or Afterburner or whatever, you know?
Or Afterburner. Yeah, like, and, I mean, at least to Hanna-Barbera's credit, they didn't, like, directly lift screenshots and audio from those things like Sega did. Like, I don't think Sega ever asked to use like full lines from Home Alone for Nights into Dreams soundtrack.
No.
I'm honestly surprised they didn't get sued yet. Like, can't you imagine like a news story where they're like, Disney, now owner of Home Alone, tells Sega to remove Nights into Dreams from Steam?
But if you use it as a, what do they call it, a sample, wouldn't you be able to say that you changed it enough to be its own original audio? It's kind of like the whole Vanilla Ice and where it's like he uses the bass line, but he changes it a little bit.
We'll see. I'm going to sue Sega. But yeah, so Wacky Races, the show itself, it ran on CBS Saturday mornings from September 14th, 1968 to January 4th, 1969. And it ran in syndication from 76 to 82.
Wow.
And in total, only 17 20-minute episodes were produced, with each featuring two 10-minute segments, which is not new. They do that now. In fact, a lot of shows just make 10-minute segments. So, you know, we'll cover the full roster of racers in a moment, but the standout character by far in the series is Dick Dastardly and his dog Muttley, who is always seen on the cover. Here's that, and here he is on the cover of the game. You see him there, and we even put him on the cover of this episode. So the duo actually saw a spin-off in 1969. So the same year the show ended, they came back to the TV screens in a show called Dastardly and Muttley in Their Flying Machines, which is interesting because there is a movie called, and maybe I'm butchering it, but I think it's called like Those Amazing Men in Their Flying Machines, and it's about like crazy characters in flying machines, kind of like The Great Race. This show, though, it ran 17 episodes, and the plot saw Dastardly and Muttley as World War I flying aces on a mission to stop a messenger pigeon named Yankee Doodle Pigeon from delivering top-secret messages to an opposing army. And while they never did stop the pigeon on the series, in the 2020 CG movie Scoob, in which Dick Dastardly serves as the main antagonist, there's an Easter egg of a dead pigeon on his desk, meaning that Dick Dastardly did kill the pigeon in the end and stuff it. Yeah. And I've watched the show, and you hate that pigeon. You're like, oh, I want him to kill that pigeon. Because the pigeon's just like, woo. He's like happy.
Right.
Well, I'm going to go deliver the messages. Like, he's not... I don't know. It's kind of like Tom and Jerry, how you're sometimes just like, you just want Tom to kill Jerry.
Right.
You know?
Because of his little cocky smirk.
He's sassy.
Yeah.
Meanwhile, another standout character was Penelope Pitstop, and she had her own spin-off in 1969 as well, ran 17 episodes in her series, saw Penelope being attacked by her guardian, who was named Sylvester Sneakily, who was out to claim her inheritance. However, Sylvester went under the alter ego of the Hooded Claw, and he has 2 henchmen named the Bully Brothers. But the Anthill Mob, which are little tiny mobsters, like think the Seven Dwarfs, but they're like mobsters. They are from Wacky Races, and they serve as the protagonists, attempting to rescue Penelope from the Claw's traps. And if the concepts for both those shows sound insane, then, you know, basically welcome to the world of Hanna-Barbera. And now let's kill 2 birds with 1 stone, or 2 pigeons with 1 stone, and watch the show's intro, which also introduces all the racers, so it saves us the time of sitting here for 30 minutes looking at pictures.
All right. You want me to play it?
So let's do it.
Here it goes.
And now here they are, the most daredevil group of dandy drivers to ever whirl their wheels in the Wacky Races.
Very 70s.
For the title of the world's wackiest
And they
race.
recreate this for the Dreamcast game, too.
Right.
Which is pretty cool.
It's like something from the Beatles right here. Like the art style.
Yeah, right. Especially the background.
Yeah.
The Anthill Mob in their bulletproof bomb. And there's ingenious inventor, Pat Pending in his converter car. Oh, and here's the lovely Penelope Pitstop, the glamour gal of the gas pedal.
You know when we talked about Sonic, the Sonic game, the Team Sonic Racing, and how like the vehicles were iconic? This has really unique vehicles, so it makes it interesting.
Oh, they're awesome. Yeah.
Dick Dastardly with his villain mustache.
Some dirty trick, and they're off to a standing start. And why not? They've been chained to a post by Shifty Dick Dastardly.
Shifty.
Hey, that's what he did to us at the intro of the show.
On the way out, Wacky Races.
Beautiful. Beautiful.
So, I mean, you can see there lots of way out, wacky, far out, lots of kind of swinging, ding, ding, a ding, ding, ding.
Very,
like, very
era.
Straight out of Austin Powers, yeah.
Right, yeah.
But, yeah, so, I mean, it's a very way out, far out happening kind of intro there. And I just threw this in there. It's worth noting, actually, Hanna-Barbera, a lot of their voice actors were radio talent. Which I guess they could get for cheaper, and I guess voice actors didn't really exist they existed.
But not for, like, animation. Like, there wasn't, like, iconic ones, right? Like, the girl that did Snow White.
There were.
Was she, like, an iconic person?
So, a lot of the voice actors would either come straight from... Like, Walt Disney himself was the voice of Mickey. And so, often you'd see people... And you see this in game development, too. Like, we talked to the guy who was the voice of Bubsy, who actually worked on the game.
Right.
You know, so it's like, who do we get to voice this character? Well, we either spend thousands of dollars to bring someone in, or, hey, that guy does a wacky voice. And in their case here, I think they needed people who were a little more on the cheap. They didn't want to pay big-name actors, and so they would bring in radio talent, which is why Casey Kasem was the voice of Shaggy on Scooby-Doo. So I just pointed that out. And years later, the Dreamcast game that came out actually had two of the original voice actors, Janet Waldo and John Stevenson, reprising the roles as Penelope Pitstop and Luke, who was the country bumpkin with the bear. So, yeah, from there, just talking TV before we get to the games, in 1977, Captain Caveman and the Teen Angels was produced. It was a show that had the titular Captain Caveman being modeled after the Slag Brothers from Wacky Races. So if you ever see those cavemen, you might have seen a version of them later on. And interestingly, Captain Caveman was later made to be sort of a superhero character in the Flintstones universe. So
that would make
sense.
There's
a little connection there.
Because, they're the same era.
There was Flintstone Kids, which was a show. So in the 90s, Hanna-Barbera had a lot of, under TBS, they did a lot of kids shows. So they would make Yo Yogi, where they were all kids, and Flintstone Kids, where they were all kids. And they had a kid version of Captain Caveman. So
what?
That's just interesting.
So it's like Virtual Fighter Kids.
But pretty much, yeah, it was.
Or Looney Tunes.
In 1990, there was a series called Wake, Rattle, and Roll, which featured a segment called Fender Bender 500, and the show follows the exact same premise as Wacky Races. However, instead of a U.S. tour, it's a world tour. And Dick Dastardly returns. However, all the other racers are from Hanna-Barbera shows like Yogi Bear and Augie Doggy and Daddy and Doggy Daddy. Augie Doggy Doggy Daddy.
What a weird name. I've never seen that one. Like Doggy Daddy, is that, I don't know. Is that like a 70s thing?
Augie Doggy and Doggy Daddy were shows, older shows. But they were a larger and a smaller, kind of like orange dog with a big snout. And
I have seen this.
Hey, Doggy Daddy. And you go, what is it, my little boy? Yeah.
Yeah, I've seen it.
But what's interesting is there are portions of the series on YouTube, but a large chunk of it's considered lost media. So there was a direct sequel to Wacky Races, and it's not around. Now let's get into the video games. So around this time, in 1991, Wacky Races made its video game debut on the NES, which was surprisingly developed and published by the now Sega-owned Atlas. So Atlas made the first Wacky Races game, which isn't too crazy because we've talked about the Ghostbusters game on here, and that was developed by correct me if I'm wrong, was it Ancient?
I think so.
The company that did Puyo Puyo, right?
Yeah, it was. No, that one was. I think I want to see Climax. Let me see. I'll look. Compile. There you go. That's what did it.
Compile.
Right,
Compile. Yeah. Compile. Ancient did, I think, Game Gear Sonic games.
Yeah.
But yeah, Compile. So it wasn't out of the ordinary for well-established Japanese companies to do the occasional US-based licensed game. But it's weird, right? Like Atlas.
Right.
From the makers of Catherine Full Body
or
comes Wacky Races.
It's like Demon Summoning
Persona 5.
RPG. Shin Megami Tensei brings you Wacky Races. It's like, all right,
right.
Cool.
What's weird, though, is the game was not a racer, despite the title and the franchise it was based on. Instead, it was a platformer starring Muttley. Unrelated. Oh, and it's interesting. I actually later learned, after I did these notes, that Wacky Races actually had a resurgence in Japan in the 90s, and so that's why this happened. Muttley was very popular in Japan for a time because they were airing this show in Japan, probably because it's an easy dub. You just get the announcer, in Japanese, and
right.
Japanese love racers. Speed Racer,
right?
So that's pretty much why it happened. Atlas developed this game for a Japanese audience, and it was easy to bring over here because it's an American franchise.
Right.
So,
but
yeah, that's interesting.
It's weird that they made a Wacky Races and they're like, let's make it a platformer. It's easier. Right? It's like...
Isn't that weird?
It's like the show was a racing. The literal title of the game is called Wacky Races, but it's a platformer. All right, cool. Okay, cool. That's pretty awesome.
Don't ask me why. And then, unrelated to the NES game, there was an Amiga and Atari ST game, which was a little more racing focused, but not quite, because instead you drove a car through a platforming like level, but you were always moving forward. And I guess the modern equivalent would be like maybe a 2D Endless Runner, or even if you've played the Wonder Boy games when you get on the skateboard and you can't stop. It's kind of like that. And I have the back cover of the box so you can kind of see a bit of it, but we can actually watch. Wait, let me see if this is...
This one's a Mega Drive one, I think.
So the next one's Mega Drive. But yeah, you can see there on the Atari ST cover, back cover there, you get a little look at the game. So it's interesting. I don't know. Finally, there was an unreleased Sega Genesis Wacky Races game developed by Eden Entertainment Software, and the graphics were actually quite impressive with Mode 7 style. For the Genesis.
Right. I was going to say, it had this... Well, we could look at it. You want me to just play it and we could talk about it?
Yeah, let's look. Keep it playing and I'll talk over it.
See, the thing that this reminds me of is like, I don't know. It's weird because it has those... I hated these games that took half the screen was just the menu. I hated that, but go on.
Well, yeah, I mean, at least the map in the center is kind of helpful, but everything else is just like the switches going.
Right.
But yeah, I mean, the graphics are kind of impressive. Mode 7 style, not typically seen on the Genesis. Gameplay-wise, it was an actual racer. However, sadly, as mentioned, it was unreleased, but there was a working prototype that was uncovered and fully playable. And it was recently released. I don't know when, but recent. And the main programmer, Julian Scott, had this to say, and this is kind of funny. So he said, "As far as I was convinced, the game was 100% complete. Although it might have had a few bugs remaining as it never got passed on to Sega for approval. As far as I understand it, Virgin Games, who were the publishers, discovered that they didn't actually have the rights to Wacky Races after all, so the game was canned."
Oh my God.
And they didn't figure this out until the game was complete. Can you imagine that?
Well, the good thing is people could just download it and play it on their EverDrive or whatever now. But, yeah.
Sega Retro has it. Yeah.
And you know what? The little, after you finish the race, the little animation after it is pretty nice. I'm going to be honest. For, a Mega Drive game. The presentation.
Yeah, it's not bad.
Yeah.
But it's interesting. You look through this history of video games for Wacky Races, and you have a game from Atlas that Sega later bought.
Right.
You have a game on the Sega Genesis that was canceled that would have been the first true Wacky Races racer.
Right.
And then finally we come to 2000, and we had a slew of Wacky Races games, which happens to be the focus of the Sega Talk. So there were other ones. So titled Wacky Races, the game was developed... This game, not the game we're going to be talking about, was developed by Appaloosa Interactive for the PC and PlayStation, while a Game Boy Color version was developed by Velez and Dubai. And these versions of the game, however, are not the Dreamcast version we know and love. And I looked at them. In fact, I don't even think this is like a remake or a port that was enhanced. It looks like a completely different game. Maybe they shared art assets. Maybe they shared some music cues. But by and large, the Dreamcast version looks to me like a completely different game. Kind of like you'd compare Sonic Unleashed on the Wii compared to the 360. Sure, it's the same title, but it plays completely differently. So the game we know was actually developed by Infogrames Sheffield House and released to the US and Europe in June 2000 to the Dreamcast, and in June 2001 to the European PS2, where it was retitled Wacky Races starring Dastardly and Muttley.
That's how popular they were.
Interesting... Well, yeah, they were super popular. And interestingly, this is an era where PS1 games were often ported to the Dreamcast with little effort put into updating controls or graphics. So to see this effort put into essentially a Dreamcast exclusive outside of Europe, is almost unheard of. And it surprises me there was no Japanese release, given there was Dastardly and Muttley love over there. So... I mean, it's not a question here, but what are your thoughts on this being, essentially a Dreamcast exclusive for the U.S.?
I mean, it's nice that the developer did that. I do wonder, how popular the Wacky Races branding was during this time? Because like the cartoon was in the 70s, right? If they did pinball
but you
machines,
look at the box and it has Cartoon Network there, so this was definitely a cartoon that was being re-aired, on the channel,
And I do wonder if they just saw like a surgence of people or fans tuning in when they re-aired it, and they're like, "Let's greenlight a game," and then they just did it. It seems kind of weird though. Like, is there any other classic brands that you're surprised haven't made like a comeback like this, at least in the 2000s, or mascot racing? Like, I don't know, Felix the Cat, or Betty Boop.
Yeah, well, I mean, there's. I think in general, licensed games have kind of gone away, which is a real shame because I'll see stuff like Buzz Lightyear coming out to theaters, and I'm like, man, I remember a time when we would have the Buzz Lightyear game on Dreamcast, and now there's nothing.
Right, even Disney,
big name movies, like even Star Wars movies, no longer have game adaptations. I used to love playing like the Episode 1 game on PS1 or on Dreamcast, and now it's like it's only Lego. So I think it's a real shame that a lot of this licensed stuff is, kind of fallen by the wayside. No, I was just going to point out, it's a full-color manual, too, for the Dreamcast. Look at that.
Oh.
Isn't that nice?
They're spinning
like,
the
you don't
big
get
bucks.
that all that much. Yeah, and each page's border is a different sort of, like, design. It's kind of fun. So, yeah, a lot of love went into this. There's actually original artwork on the inside, which is kind of neat.
Oh, nice.
But yeah, so this game, it was for some reason, this developer went to great lengths for Sega games, but like Sega fans, but like what sort of developer would care so much about Sega fans? Well, let's enter Gremlin Interactive, and Gremlin Graphics Software Limited, which was later known as Gremlin Interactive Limited, was based out in Sheffield, mostly working on home computer games for 8-bit machines, including, and I love these names, the ZX Spectrum.
Oh, yes.
I can't do my British voice. The Amstrad CPC, the MSX, the Commodore 16, and the Commodore 64. Like, I get Retro Gamer magazine, and half of the magazine is like Brits geeking out over computers. I love it. It's so funny. Like, oh, I remember the ZX Spectrum, yeah.
They just played games at a higher level than us. Like, they did their Excel sheets.
They did.
They were doing stock trading, and they were playing Wacky Racing and other games on their computer.
Exactly.
Right?
Oh, yeah, love it. Love Wacky Races. But, yeah, so this group, they were acquired by France-based publisher Infogrames in 1999, and the studio was renamed to Infogram Studio Limited, or Infogram Studios Sheffield. Gremlin, in their early days, had their hands in all sorts of genres, but notable to racing fans, they created the Lotus racing series, as well as futuristic racing game Motorhead, a stunt car game called Fatal Racing, and a flight simulator called Hard War.
You play any of those games?
None of them.
Yeah.
I mean, I didn't have the ZX Spectrum.
Yeah, I know. Yeah, that's for rich people.
But I'm sure there's some British fans listening who are like, oh yeah, I love Lotus on my ZX.
Yes.
Infogrames Sheffield worked on a number of golf and tennis games in their early years. So this would be in the early 2000s, as well as a few Micro Machines games and a Superman game. And smack dab in the middle of that catalog was Wacky Races. However, unfortunately, the studio was closed in 2003, but it did have a successor that is very well known to Sega fans. That's right. This Sheffield-based studio became Sheffield-based Sumo Digital.
Oh.
Did you see that twist coming?
No, I didn't actually.
Yeah.
But it makes sense.
So Sumo Digital, yeah, they went on to make several fantastic racing games starring Sega All-Star characters, and I think we just did.
Right.
Didn't we just do Sonic and Sega All-Stars Racing?
Yeah.
So, I mean, it's... These Patreon pickers, man, they're like... It's kind of like in Saw, where it all comes together at the end,
right,
and that music plays, and it's like, wait a minute. Wacky Races? Gremlin? It was all... And then we, cut our legs off. I mean, I'm in a basement, so it's not too far off. But, and it's Halloween. So, I
just go ahead and solve them off.
So, Anyways, yeah, so Sumo Digital, it was founded in 2003 by 4 members of the former management team of Infogram Studios. And given their content released shortly after the founding, those included Virtua Tennis, Outrun, and Sonic and Sega All-Stars Racing. It could be said that Wacky Races is really like a very close relative, if not a precursor, to the All-Stars Racing franchise.
Right.
So what are your thoughts on this close connection between Wacky Races for the Dreamcast and Outrun and Sega's All-Stars franchise?
Well, I mean, and we're going to talk about this. Obviously, the All-Star games are better than Wacky Races.
For sure. But what do you think of that connection there?
I actually didn't know this connection, so I'm kind of like mind-blowing a bit. But it does make sense with Sumo Digital, I guess. Like, they went straight into racing games when they were formed. It's because that's what they knew. So, yeah, It's pretty nice. I like it.
And tennis, too. Like, they were doing unrelated tennis games.
Right.
And then they, like, it was probably, like, the perfect pitch meeting. Like, if you've ever had that interview that just goes perfectly.
Right.
Like, you're like, here's what I do. This is why you need me. Look at my back catalog. And they were probably like, oh, shit, you did Wacky Races. You know,
Right.
We love that. So let's talk about the game itself. So as far as gameplay, Wacky Races, at its core is really just your standard 3D kart racer. However, thanks to the pedigree of the development team, it really is a top-notch kart racer. It's simple, but it's very well made. And given the Wacky Races license predates anything Sega, Nintendo, or any other video game developer has done, it really, in my opinion, kind of frees up Wacky Races from being compared to the likes of Mario Kart or other kart racers at the time. I think about how when this game came out, and I didn't hear anyone going, oh, it's a ripoff of Mario Kart. Like, it's an adaptation of a TV show from the 60s.
Right.
So why not making a racing game, you know? So, I don't know, I think that's interesting. The game is made up of 2 modes, arcade and adventure, and while arcade mode is your basic racer across different tracks, adventure mode is really, George, like you like to say, the meat and potatoes, right?
Right.
This is where the game shines. So players are dropped into a 3D map that acts as a hub for all the racetracks. Players can race to win gold stars or Wacky trial clocks. Wacky trial clocks are awarded for winning a race a certain amount of time, and they unlock boss challenges. Meanwhile, gold stars are needed to unlock things like tracks and areas, and are earned by winning events. And every 10 gold stars also unlocks a boss area in which the player competes against 3 elite racers who are equipped with attack power-ups. So speaking of power-ups, the game has I think it's kind of a cool system. So essentially, every player has a selection of gadgets that they can pick from, including stuff like explosive mines, turbo speed, flight ability, invincibility. However, each gadget is unique to that racer in a design sense. Like, it shows differently on the screen. Like, all right, let's take All-Stars Racing as an example. Everyone has the green punching... What is that? Like the
power glove or whatever?
The glove, yeah. It's like the boxing glove, that's it. But imagine this. Every single character has that sort of ability. However, with, like, Knuckles, it's his glove. With Robotnik, it's a missile. With Amy, it's a kiss. You know, so it's unique to that racer, which really makes it feel like there's... I mean, you look at this, 11 racers. I don't know how many gadgets there are each, but you're looking at close to 100 already unique gadgets that really are all the same. But, I don't know, I just thought that was kind of... You know, you look at the innovations that Sumo did later, and I think this is kind of a little hint at the kind of smart little decisions they'd make. It's kind of unfortunate that it's actually a little more cutting edge than what they ended up doing for the Sonic games, but whatever. And what you'd do essentially is you'd pick 3 gadgets that would fill your slots, and then what you would do as you were racing is you would pick up a token on the track, which would allow you to use one of your gadgets, but then when you use your gadget, you drop the token, and then another player can pick it up. So let's say you're in the lead, you get a token, you use that weapon, it's going to drop, and someone behind you can now pick it up and, you know, fire on you. So it's an interesting dynamic. What do you think about that sort of concept for weapons?
The idea that when you use a weapon, it could actually backfire if somebody's behind you, so it makes you strategically use the weapon in a way. Like using it in a place where most people won't get it after you, or as long as someone's not directly behind you. Is that what you're saying?
Right, because if someone was first, I was second, and third place was behind me, and I picked up a token to shoot the guy in front of me, I would then drop it, and the guy behind me might pick it up and use it against me. Or they might use a booster and then go past me.
Right.
And so you kind of have to guess maybe like, I'll take a shortcut, try to cut this so this guy can't follow me. I'll use the weapon there, and then when I get back on the main track,
right,
he can't get the token.
It's brilliant.
So
it's brilliant.
I think it's...
Yeah, because like, I'm surprised...
It's interesting.
Nobody else has done this for the racing game. Like, every game I played that's been a kart racer, it's always been the same thing as Mario Kart, where they spawn in a certain spot in the map. And that makes it more interesting because it changes the locations of weapons. So, like, the weapons aren't always spawned the same time, so it gives it more of a luck aspect to it, because those tokens are going to be changing around the map, but you can't predict it after the first lap where they're going to be. So
that's a good point. Yeah.
That
so
makes
instead
it more
of these like, because you'd get these like preset lines of mystery boxes,
right?
But if there's just tokens being thrown all over the track, it's a little more wacky.
Exactly.
As mentioned, the game features the entire cast from the cartoon. However, because it's an 8-car grid, you cannot race every single character at once. But it's 8 characters, 8, 9, 10, 11. So you're only missing out on 3. And you don't really notice it as you're racing. It's pretty crazy. So yeah, I mean, similar to Sonic and Sega All-Stars Racing, tracks are spread out amongst themed levels, which in the case of Sonic, it kind of was a downfall. Here, I think it works, though. In this game, there's a desert area, snow area, forest area, and a city area. And despite the kind of limited number of areas there, you actually get some pretty unique tracks for each area. So there's a Wild West town, coal mines, snow-covered mountains, a Wacky Races version of Mount Rushmore, and a rooftop track. And then on top of that, the 3D map really gives a sense of place to all the tracks, making everything feel interconnected in a really fun and unique way that I honestly have never seen in a kart racer before. I guess maybe the closest thing would be like Forza, but that's more like open world.
Right.
So what are your overall thoughts on Wacky Races, both as a pick-up-and-play arcade game and as a deeper game with like an open world map and areas to unlock?
Did you play Diddy Kong Racing? I think, is that the one? Or Crash Team Racing? Have you played that one?
Briefly. I didn't play too much of it. Does it have a hub world?
It does have a hub world, and I think that's where they maybe got a little bit inspired by. But I do like the idea that these games are adding more to it. I think that's one of the things that Mario Kart never actually capitalized on, is they have this interesting world of Mario, but they always do the bare basic when you play the games, right? Like, it's just racing over and over again in the lap. They never added an adventure mode or let you play with these characters in an adventure type setting. Like, it would be cool to have an open world Mario game where you could, pick your select tracks and stuff. But yeah, I do like it. I like any single player extra content. I think that's something that Sumo Digital did really well later on too. So, big fan.
Yeah, it would have been cool if in Sonic and Sega All-Stars Racing they had, remember the transformed final track where it was like all this crazy fan service?
Right.
Imagine if that was actually the hub world and you just drove around and it was kind of like a little open course that you could, trick and do some fun stuff. But there were these portals into the different game dimensions and they had like 3D statues of the characters like they had in that track. Like, that would have been sweet. It
could always happen in the future, but like, I like the idea, especially now that multiverses are being like mainstream. Like, all the Spider-Man stuff and Marvel stuff, it feels like people are way more open to that concept, the idea of these portals going to other worlds. But yeah,
I could see that. Talking about Crash Team Racing, I looked it up. That game released in October 1999 in Europe, and this game released June 2000. So there's about a 9-month gap there. I don't know if that's enough time to be inspired. It's possible.
Yeah,
though.
I'm surprised that
I don't know.
so many good big PlayStation games came out during the launch of the Dreamcast. I think Final Fantasy VIII also came out, and a few other ones. It's just so crazy how long the PlayStation 1 was supported. When you look at Final Fantasy VIII and then you look at Shenmue, it's almost laughable going back to PlayStation 1 graphics. That's how advanced the Dreamcast was at the time. But yeah.
And it'll happen again with PlayStation 2.
Right.
Because I'm gonna talk about something right quick here. But graphically, the Dreamcast and PS2 releases sported cel-shaded graphics, making it look like the original cartoon come to life. Other Dreamcast games to use this type of graphical look include Jet Set Radio and Looney Tunes Space Race. However, I would say Jet Set Radio is more going for a sloppy, sketchy, blocky sort of vibe, whereas this one and Looney Tunes was going much more for trying to evoke 2D hand-drawn brought to 3D.
Right, different.
How would you say the graphics of this game compare at the time, and do you think the shaded style kind of elevates the game a little bit?
Oh yeah, I think it makes it unique. I think back then there was a lot of people trying to do the cel shaded look. I think Fear Effect was before Jet Set Radio, but it was literally just 3D trying to be. It's not the same technique at all. It's a totally different.
It was not black outlines, right? It was just very hard shaded.
And it was just the way they drew on the polygon models on the PlayStation to make it look 2D, but it wasn't an actual engine the way that they do on Jet Set Radio. I do like the hard outlines they used on it. I really liked cel-shaded games back then. It was kind of when Jet Set Radio opened that door, I felt like I was always looking for games that were trying to do something similar, and I wish Sega did more games like that with different animation styles. I was surprised that they only did Jet Set Radio, and every other game just kind of looked 3D basically.
I know. I mean, Sonic Shuffle's the only one also to come to mind. I just realized.
Right, and then Nintendo also did it with their Zelda game, which is I think pretty big honors thinking about it, because in the fact that Nintendo themselves were oh, that franchise from the 64 that was 3D, we're gonna make it cel shaded. That was pretty crazy, I think.
George, are you talking about Zelda?
Zelda, right?
As we call it, Zelda.
Zelda, yes.
That stupid game.
Wind Waker.
Looks like it's made for kids.
Right. People got upset about it, right? Yeah.
They did. They called it Zelda.
I think it looks nice. I think it looks great. So yeah.
Well, it's interesting because, Wacky Races, it saw release to the PS2 in Europe, and the Infogrames version is actually often confused with another Wacky Races game that released in 2007, also to the PS2, from Coyote Console, which was subtitled Mad Motors. So it was called Wacky Races Mad Motors, which is neither a sequel or a successor to the Infogrames game. And despite releasing 7 years after the Infogrames version, the game lacks cel-shaded graphics, and the cars feel stiff. And on top of that, you boot it up, and it's just like a menu. There's no real charm to it. It's just ready to race, start. And you were mentioning how PS1 had such a long lifespan. Imagine this: PS2, 2000 game releases in 2000. 7 years later, a game basically doing the exact same thing, but not a sequel, releases to the same console. What were they? Why didn't you just re-release the same game?
Exactly.
I don't understand it. There's nothing new about this. And let's actually, I think I have video of it here. Let's look at the video. It's so bizarre that they...
Mad Motors?
Yeah.
Okay.
I don't know why they did this.
They put it on.
So this game only released in Europe. It didn't release in America.
Okay, here's the menu. It's terrible.
It looks terrible.
So, okay, let me pause it. So
and someone died.
Right, the background is literally a checkered flag, and they put it on Photoshop, and they put the transparency to 50, and then they just put a picture of the racers. Yeah, beautiful.
And then they open with the someone's death.
Let me see. I'm fast forwarding a little bit.
In memory on 30 seconds, in memory of Richard Joseph.
Who's that?
I don't know.
Probably important. Let me go to the gameplay, because this thing is just choosing things. Oh, you're right. This is like just 3D. Wow.
He was the composer.
Ah.
He was a composer for video games. He most notably did James Pond
Oh, really?
and Three Ninjas Kick Back the
Oh,
Video.
that one was sick. I love that game. I mean, I love the movie. Sorry, not the game.
He did a lot of music for Commodore 64 and Amiga games.
UK legend.
Yeah, but that's kind of sad. Like, that's kind of a sad way to kick off a game, to remind everyone that someone died.
Right. A game that nobody played. What do you...
Did he work on this game?
This game...
He didn't work on this game.
Oh, no.
He's not credited. So he was... Maybe he was contracted and then he died before they could do it. But look at the menu. Menu's really crummy. I mean, compare it to the Dreamcast one, it's night and day.
Right. And like...
I don't know where you are.
I'm just looking at
gameplay. Did it
gameplay.
get to the racing?
Oh, I already did.
The gameplay
I've been
looks-
skipping around.
Yeah, the gameplay just looks generic.
Yeah. It's
It
stiff.
just doesn't look good.
It looks like a DS game a little bit, right?
Yeah, and that was my thing. Is it looks very stiff. If you've played the Dreamcast one, the vehicles have a little rubberiness to them, and a lot of parts are moving. They're kind of shaking. Here, they're just like static models.
Right.
Really,
They
characters aren't like reacting to each other.
No. And there's like, you can't even see the characters in the, like, I guess you could see them when they do the back thing. I don't know, it's just not good. Yeah,
No.
I wouldn't buy
so
this game.
let's remove this.
Yeah.
Remove this from our screens immediately,
Thank
sir.
God.
In 2008, there was another Wacky Races game. So this is 1 year later.
Jesus.
And this one was subtitled Crash and Dash. This was released to the Wii and the DS. It was developed by Eidos Studios Sweden. So those Swedes are making games now.
Wow.
The game saw a wider release than the PS2 releases, as this came to the US, Europe, and Australia. However, reviews for this game were poor to mixed. The game had 3 modes: Crazy Circuit, Wacky Race, and Trap Challenge. Every racer from the show, except for Dastardly and Muttley, are playable, with the villains acting as characters setting up traps for the racers. And despite the poor reviews graphically, I think the game actually looks really good. It looks more like the TV show than any of the previous games, despite lacking cell shading. And it even has newly animated scenes with Dastardly and Muttley, and the environments look exactly like 1960s painted backdrops, like from the show. Gameplay is a mix of side-scrolling 3D racing and Wiimote mini-games. So, for example, you'll be going, and then all of a sudden it's like a ping-pong game between cars, like knocking bombs around. So, in my opinion, I mean, the game isn't trying to be a fully 3D kart racer, so it's like, I don't know, I think it looks kind of cool. It's not like stepping on the toes of the Infogrames one. Let's check out some footage.
You want me to start it
I
like
think this is actually...
like when the animation starts?
Yeah, I would say let's check it out around like 1 minute 30 seconds something.
All right.
So this is just like cutscene animation, but you can see it's new animation done in the style of the show.
Oh, yeah.
It looks good. And then if you jump ahead to like 3 minutes 30 seconds, you can see the in-game cutscenes that lead to the like the menus giving you the heads up for what the next mini game is going to be. So if we're seeing the same thing, the bridge is out, so you have to paddle with the Wiimote. So if you watch now, when you go back into the race, Dastardly and Muttley, you see that?
Yeah.
Like, it looks cool, doesn't it? It looks kind of fun.
Right, I agree with that.
Graphics look good, I think.
Well, we're also looking at it on the Dolphin emulator in 4K, so it's upscaled and it looks nicer. But yeah, that's one thing I do like about modern games. You can make them look way better than they looked on the Wii, because this probably would have been blurry on the Wii.
if you go to like 9 minutes 50 seconds, you can see some of the side-scrolling and overhead racing. I think it looks cool. Like,
Nice.
and it's all the. I think it's all the racers minus Dastardly and Muttley.
This looks way
So that's
better
10 racers.
than the other one we saw.
Yeah. Yeah.
Has more life to it, like an announcer, the animation. Yeah, I agree.
So, yeah. So, I mean, this isn't our focus, but I just thought I'd shine the spotlight on that. I think that actually, I mean, despite poor reviews, I'm going to eBay that. That looks fun. I'll check it out. Now, shifting away from video games, so in 2006, a pilot was actually produced for a spin-off series called Wacky Races, so they kept the name. It was called Wacky Races Forever. That's it. And the series depicted a roster of new and returning racers featuring Penelope Pitstop and Peter Perfect, who were now married, with their company Perfect Industries acting as the corporate sponsor for the new Wacky Races, and their children competed in the race.
Ooh, the next generation.
And the series, unfortunately, it was not picked up by Cartoon Network, so it was, a one-and-done pilot. But you can check that out on YouTube. It's pretty cool. It's probably the closest to like a direct sequel that we'll ever get.
I kind of like when they do that, when they do the next generation. I think, like we were just talking about, Looney Tunes, and then they had Tiny Toons or whatever. Like, I think it's cool when they do that, where they, like, the kids have their own show.
And I have to wonder, maybe this is the movie our Patreon picker mentioned, because it is like a one-off sort of thing that was pretty well, I guess, prevalent back in 2006.
Right.
So, I don't know. They call it a movie, but it's only, I think, 5 minutes. So, who knows? But, yeah, so there was that. And then the craziest one, I think, is in 2016, DC Comics, which, of course, is under the whole Warner Brothers umbrella, launched a comic series called Wacky Raceland, which was a dark and gritty reimagining of the series set in an apocalyptic Mad Max-style universe. What do you think of that?
I mean, it makes sense because, I mean, we had the Archie After Dark series that kind of like... remember how crazy people got about the idea that Archie characters were getting killed by zombies and stuff? So I think that this is kind of the same idea, and they probably thought, it's so crazy that people will read it just to see how insane it is.
Right. Yeah. Around this time, too, there was kind of like a bunch of limited runs of Hanna-Barbera, like reimaginings. I own a few of them. I can't remember them off the top of my head, but they also did one called Future Quest. And what that was it was Johnny Quest tying in with almost all of like the fantasy Hanna-Barbera shows. So it was like a big epic crossover with like them saying like, oh, this guy's father was actually killed by that guy. So it was like making all these crazy connections. So if you were like a fan of all those shows, you'd be like, oh, that's that guy, but he killed that guy. Oh, wow.
They also did one for the Flintstones where it was more talking about income inequality and work culture and stuff. And
that's
that
right.
one won awards, I know. And so some of them actually did.
That one was good.
Yeah, some of them did actually have deeper meanings. This one looks like somebody just went crazy. They're like, all right, we're just going to make a crazy, gritty reboot, kind of making fun of gritty reboots in a way. That's what it kind of feels like.
Pretty much.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I was buying a lot of these. I didn't buy this one, even though I'm a big Wacky Races fan, just because I was like, what the hell is this? But looking back, I might get the trade paperback. It's on Amazon. It's not expensive, but still, it looks insane.
Right.
But, I mean, it's Wacky Races. Of course it's going to be insane.
It has to be.
And this one I was not aware of. So in 2017, the series was rebooted under the name Wacky Races, so just kept the name Wacky Races, and it saw the return of Dick Dastardly, Muttley, Penelope Pitstop, Peter Perfect, and the Gruesome Twosome, as well as several new characters. So it's interesting that they take like the main well-known characters, then the monster guys, you know, like out of everyone. The series actually ran for 2 seasons with an astonishing 78 episodes. I've never heard of this show.
So, where did it air?
I don't know. Maybe like Boomerang at like 5 in the morning. Like
I've legit never seen.
You know, maybe alongside Sonic Boom. I bet.
Right. And I think those were the channels. Boomerang or whatever was where I saw most of these classic cartoons because they were being played like 24 hours a day. So if you ever like watched Nickelodeon during some hours, it would be like real life shows. So I would obviously go to Boomerang to see actual cartoons, right? So you want to see the opening?
Yeah.
I'm sorry, you want to...
Well, I was just going to say, you know, I was actually excited to learn about this today, but then I saw that the series was a departure from the original concept because it focuses on the racers' personal lives, and often there is no actual winner or loser revealed for the race, which to me is like,
what?
Why are you making this then? That's the whole fun of being... If you go to the Wacky Races Wikipedia page, they have a whole grid of every episode and the racers and their placement. Like, there's an obsessed fan base who are like treating this like real racers, and they even have like who is the top, you know, winner out of the series. And here we have a show, 78 episodes, and you won't even tell us who won most of them.
It's kind of sacrilege,
the show is,
though, isn't it? Like, it's kind of like having Scooby-Doo, but like the murder never gets caught, and it's always this like dark ending where it's like the serial killer's still among us. And it's like, right?
I don't think Scooby ever chased after serial killers.
No, but I'm saying it's like...
They would be
it's like they rebooted it, and it's like about true crime and drama and like not anything like it used to be, right? So...
Right. That would be...
It'd be dumb.
Oh, well, we don't know. Let's watch the intro. It's 20 seconds long.
All right. It has that 70s look so far.
It looks good. That's the thing.
Whoa, the animation's weird.
It's
like a mobile game.
It looks like the It looks like the Esurance, Aaron Esurance.
Right.
Remember those commercials? The pink-haired lady.
Okay, I don't like all the animation style, like the character redesigns and stuff. I don't know. I like the old. Like they should have tried to make it look like the old cartoon, in a way. But yeah. It is weird.
So, mixed bag there.
Right.
And then in 2020, the CG animated Scooby-Doo movie titled Scoob saw several Hanna-Barbera characters becoming part of the Scooby-Doo universe. I think they had... there was like Robo-Mutt or whatever, and there was like the superhero. But most notably, Dick Dastardly was the main antagonist of the film. And, you know, me personally, as a fan of Wacky Races and Scooby-Doo, I thought this was pretty insane that out of nowhere they're giving a character from an old 60s cartoon like the main villain slot on a Scooby-Doo movie.
Right.
Unfortunately, COVID made this a streaming exclusive, so you couldn't go to theaters and see Dick Dastardly as God intended. But there were several Easter eggs, as I mentioned, like with the pigeon. But perhaps the craziest moment in the film is the revelation that Muttley is dead and essentially is in hell. And a portion of the film is spent on Dick Dastardly goes to the underworld to bring Muttley back.
Oh, it's like a God of War plot where he goes to hell and he has to bring somebody back. Yeah. Oh, it's beautiful.
And it's a pretty good movie, in my opinion.
But,
like many Hanna-Barbera shows, the plot's insane.
I thought,
there you go.
as a kid, I always thought that all dogs go to heaven. So, have I been misled in a way?
Not bad dogs.
Well,
no, not bad.
All dogs
not
are good boys, though. Mudley doesn't know any better. He has a bad owner.
And, well, yeah, he does. And it doesn't end there. June 2022, a stop-motion Wacky Races was announced to be in production to air on Cartoon Network. So we're going to get a new Wacky Races. It's going to be stop-motion. And the series is actually being produced by Hanna-Barbera Studios Europe. So in my eyes, this is like the first true Hanna-Barbera Wacky Races in a long time. We don't know the lineup or concept for the show, but fingers crossed we see a return of the original lineup with clear winners and losers at the end and a focus on racing.
Right.
So that pretty much does it We do not have any more memories, I think, because all the people who support us on Patreon were born in like 1960, 1940.
Wait, we don't have enough boomer people on Patreon to talk about Sega games?
No.
I think that's an issue with this. Like
No.
I told you, like, Hanna-Barbera properties
Right.
are very old. Like, even, I think if they even made a Tom and Jerry game, it would be like, not as big as it used to be. It's kind of like that Garfield kart racing game that came out that long ago. It was
Right.
cheap, it came out, and it went away, right?
But you just said it, Hanna-Barbera franchises are very old, and there are ones that retain that oldness. Like, this game is 100%
Retro.
in the 60s.
Right.
Like, the music, the graphics, and it actually works really well. And on the flip side, we've had Hanna-Barbera properties that really change with the time. Scooby-Doo,
Right.
we're having a adult-focused Mindy Kaling produced Velma series where she's a lesbian.
Right.
And that is 100%, changing with the times. And I think it might work for them. I haven't seen the show yet. But in this case, like, I can't see Wacky Races evolving
Right.
and being better than what this is. I mean, we've seen an example there with Aaron from Esurance doing a cartoon. It ran for 78 episodes, but very clearly the Wacky Races fan base really hasn't embraced it. Like, there aren't boomers going, oh man, have you seen the new Wacky Races?
Yeah.
Yeah.
And what do you think about, there was that new Tom and Jerry movie that just came out, right? Like, not that long ago.
Yeah.
And that was, they kind of changed it, right? They have this, like, Roger Rabbit's art style with real life people. What do you think about that kind of stuff?
But what was weird is there were no clear rules.
Right.
Because, and I'm reminded of the Always Sunny song, What Are the Rules?
Right,
Remember that one?
right.
Like, what are the rules?
Yeah.
Because in the Tom and Jerry movie, there's real animals and there's cartoon animals, and the cartoon animals can, like, go through major pain, but they're just treated like normal animals. It's not like, oh, yeah, there's my cartoon dog and there's my normal cat.
Right.
It's just like, there's my dog, there's my cat. And it's like, they're killing each other. They're, like, hitting each other with, like, things and falling out of windows, and it's totally cool with the humans. But what happens if Tom pushes a human out the window that's not a cartoon? Will he die? Like,
I don't know. It's weird.
You don't do
Yeah.
that.
So that
It is
they have
weird.
been trying to bring them back to modern days and trying to do new things, like we just said, Tom and Jerry with that actress that I don't remember her name. She did Hit Girl on Kick-Ass. Forget her name though.
that's right. Yeah. That was her.
She also has a new show on Amazon Prime, written by the guys that did Westworld.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
Okay.
So they're trying to do new things with it. I don't know if it worked. I think there's that Chip and Dale, but that's not a Hanna-Barbera franchise, right? That's another
No,
company.
not at
but
all.
they're trying to do the same idea
Right.
where they're trying to reboot it to a new generation. I thought that one was interesting because it literally makes fun of the old franchise and the old people, and it's like they literally continue. Like, oh yeah, that was us in our acting career. I like that. That was pretty good.
Right.
But yeah, that's my closing thoughts for Wacky Races. I think it's one of those like very 60s and 70s aesthetic shows, and I think if you're gonna reboot it, you should embrace that.
Right.
Yeah, and that's it.
And
Go on.
And my final thought was, it's not really a thought. It's it's kind of a suggestion from one of our Patreon supporters, Soniku. He said that we should do our best Muttley impressions.
Oh,
So I don't
no.
know if you can do it.
I
It's like a
can't.
raspy laugh.
You
Can you go? It's hard. How do they do that?
it's like the old man laugh, right? Like when you're all hard.
It's like a smoker's
Yeah,
laugh.
yeah.
That's what it is.
Too much.
So, George, what are we going to be talking about next time?
You know what? I do not know because I didn't even look at the notes. Do I actually have a game that I have to talk about next time that I haven't done notes on?
Do you want to know what it is?
I could look it up if you want me to.
I can tell you. It's
Sega Gaga.
Sega Gaga.
Yeah, alright. Yeah, we did talk about this last time, and I'm excited to talk about this game because, A, it never got an English release or fan translation, even though we were teased since I was in high school,
Right.
which is like 500 years ago. It it's interesting because this is another game that brings other franchises from Sega and literally breaks the fourth wall in the console wars and has a lot of nice tongue-in-cheek references. And if you want to have your memories read in this episode, please support us on Patreon at patreon.com/SegaBits. We love your support. We love everyone that listens to the show. And we'll catch you next time when we talk about Sega Gaga. Bye. Okay, bye. Alright, I'm going to stop it.
That was fun.